Today we're going to be looking at how to create this simple invoice tracker that you can see on your screen using Power BI. This is a useful tool for startups and small businesses to keep track of their invoices. The interesting thing about this report is the dataset that we're going to be using. Our dataset is actually a series of PDF files of invoices that we have. If you look at the sample that you have on your screen, you find out that the fields that we need, such as the invoice number, date issued, and due date, are not in tabular format that Power BI can easily read. So we're going to be creating a workflow using a tool known as Power Automate Desktop, a free tool by Microsoft to extract these fields, populate the fields on an Excel file, and connect the Excel file to Power BI to create our report. Hi, my name is Chamaka. Welcome to my channel where I teach Power BI and its application across different industries. If you're new to this channel, click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification icon to get notified when I post new videos. The resources I'm going to be using in this particular video, the link to that is going to be in the description below if you want to follow along. Let's get started. So let's start by examining the invoice document in order to identify the fields that we need for this analysis. The first one is the invoice number, and then we have the date of issue and due date. Also, we have the client's name, which is this Velocity Autotech Limited, and the email address here. Then finally, we have the total due, which is this total amount. You can see that all these are not within the table format. Had they been there within this table format, Power BI can easily read them. So the next thing we're going to do is to open up a free Excel file, then type our column headers that we're going to be using. So on the first column, I'm going to type in the invoice ID. Second one, we have the client. Next, we have the email. Then start date. Here we have the due date. And finally, we have the amount. So I'm going to save this to a particular folder on my laptop. Next, I will open up Power Automate Desktop. When you have installed it on your system, this is the interface that you're going to see. So I'll click on New Flow. I'm going to name this Invoices, Invoice Flow, and create. So we have this here. So I'll open this. So this is what the interface looks like. Here we have so many actions that we can select from. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to open up a folder. So I'll type folder here. So you have different, let me expand this. So I want to get files in folder. My invoice PDFs are stored in a folder. So I'm going to click on this action, get files. So drag that to this canvas. So it's going to ask you of the location of the folder. So I'm going to click on this to select the folder. So I have this folder, invoices. So that is the folder that I'm selecting. Select folder. Then here we already have asterisk here. This asterisk is trying to, so that if you have multiple files in the folder, it will get all the files within this particular folder. So I'll click save. The next thing I want the flow to do is to open up this Excel file that I've already created. You can see that I have my column headers. So I'm going to close this up, save. Then over here, I'm going to search for get Excel file. So because it's Excel, I'm going to just type Excel here so that I can see different actions assigned to Excel. So you can see that you can resize columns, run Excel macro and all of that. I want to get an Excel worksheet. So the action I'm looking for is to launch an Excel file. So we have that here. I'll click on this, drag that to this particular canvas. So I want to launch open the following document because I already have that Excel file created with my column header. So I'll click on this. Then document part. I'm going to search for that particular Excel file that I've created. So it's within the test folder. I have this here, invoice data. So I'm going to click on open. So we have that file part and then save this. So the next action I want to add is to clear cells in Excel. So for that worksheet that it has launched, I want to ensure that there is no value that I don't want within that particular worksheet. What I mean by that is that I only want that worksheet to contain only my column headers. Every other thing should be clear so that I can easily populate. So to ensure that this first part is referencing the Excel that we've opened, then we want it to clear range of cell. I want it to start from column 1, but I want it to start from column 2 because from row 2 because my row 1 contains my column header. So I don't want to clean off that. Then the end column, I'm going to put default Excel number of columns in Excel 16384. Then end row, the default number of rows in Excel 1048576. So this is what I want it to do. So I'm going to save this as well. So the next action I'm going to be adding here is the for each action. So what this action is going to do, let me look for it for each. So it's going to loop through all the invoices within that particular folder that we have, and it's going to perform series of actions on all the invoices, not just one invoices. So I want it to iterate. So now it's requesting for value to iterate. So I want it to iterate all these files, which are in invoice folder. So I'm going to click on this particular icon here. This signifies variable. So the name of our variable is files. So I'm going to reference that here. So we have that referenced. I'm going to save this. So we have this opening. So because I want to iterate over the different files that we have within this invoice folder, the next subsequent actions I want to take is going to be within this loop to ensure that iteration. So the next action that I want to add here is to extract the text from PDF. So we have an action called extract text from PDF. So I'm going to place that within this loop. So what are the PDF file? So the PDF file in this case is basically the current item within this loop. So I'm going to click on this variable to reference that current item. So this current item represents the PDF files within the particular invoice PDF folder. So I'll save that. Now I'm going to run this to see the output of this extract PDF text. Before running this, I'm going to put a pause here because I don't want this to loop through what I have, so that it will just end here. I'll click on this particular run icon to run. So over here, you can see that it's automatically opened our Excel file by itself. And here we have the extract PDF text. Over here, we can see the output of the flow. So for the extract PDF text section, you can see the output here when you view. This is what it looks like. So these are the details of our invoices. And like I said earlier, we want to extract the invoice number, the date issued, due date, and all of that. But with the way it is, we can easily extract this. We need to split the text. That will be our next action. I'll click on stop here so as to go back to continue building the flow. So we're going to be using an action known as split test. First, we want to split all the tests to ensure that you split them by line breaks. So I'll place the action here. What text to split? In this case, you have this particular variable for our previous action, extracted PDF text. So I'm going to reference that variable here. Then what kind of delimiter? I want it to be custom. And I'm going to paste this. This actually signifies to split by line breaks. It's a regular expression. Then save. So when I run this, I'll run this again. Let me quickly close this. Click on run. So when we look at the output here, which is text list, the new variable that it created for that split text action, when we look at the output, you find out that it has been split in different line breaks, that each one is assigned to an index from 0 down to 30. You can use the index number to reference that particular line, and you can easily extract that line. Click OK. So let's just click stop and continue building our flow. So the next thing we're going to do is to extract our invoice number. When we look at the output of the text list, let me expand this. You find out that our invoice number is on line 6, and we have this invoice number before the value of the invoice number. So we are now going to reference this in order to extract this. In order to do that, we'll be using an action known as parse test. So let's search for that. So I'll drag that here. The test to parse in this case is going to be this particular variable, which is test list. I'll search for that test list. Then the text to find is going to be this. So this actually means the invoice number as well as the value. It's a regular expression. And over here, we have that the position to start, just like we saw earlier, is at position 6. So I'm going to type in 6 there. Then first occurrence only. Over here, we have the variable on the position. I'm going to turn that off. But for the match, the result of that, I'm going to rename this variable as invoice ID text. Then click save. So let's run this to see what the output of this particular step is. So for invoice ID text variable, we have that here. So when I view that, you can see that it has extracted our invoice number. So that is what this variable is storing. The next is going to be the start date, which when you look at the text list variable is actually on position 7. Start date is on position 7. Due date is on position 8. The email that we're going to be using is on position 13. Then the total, it's on position 21. So you need to note down these positions because we're going to be referencing them on the past test. So we are going to add another past test action here so as to get the start date. And I'm going to reference the variable test list. Test to find is date of issue and everything after date of issue. Then is a regular expression. You're going to start from position 7. Then first occurrence of that. Then I'm going to turn off this particular one, but for the match, I'm going to label the start date text. Rename that variable as that, then save. Then another past test. For this, we're going to create for due date. The text to parse is still our same variable text.list. Text to find is the due date and everything after due date is a regular expression, and the position is position 8. Then here we are going to turn off the position here. And for the match, it's going to be due date test. Save. Next is the amount. Pass test. So I'm going to search for test.list again. Text to find is the amount that is total due, NGN, and everything afterwards is a regular expression. The position number is 21. Then here we are going to turn off the position and label this as amount text. Save. Next is the email position, but when we look at our output of the test list variable, we find out that on position 3 and position 13, there are two email addresses on this particular invoice. One is for the client and one is for the business owner. But we want the email address of the client, which is the one on position 13. So our pass test is going to be a bit different from what we have been doing. So I'll click on pass test. The test to pass is still our variable test list. The test to find is the email and everything afterwards. It's a regular expression, but we want it to be on position 13. Then instead of first occurrence only, as we have been doing, we are going to turn this off because we want it to return the two email addresses, and we're going to select the one we need later on in our flow. So over here where we have the variable produced, I'm going to label this one email positions and matches email text. Save. So let's run the flow. So let's observe that of email text that we opened. So you can see that it returned the two emails. So right now, I can now use a subsequent step to select this second one, which is the email address of the client that I need. So the next thing we'll start doing with all the output that we've gotten is to start splitting them to get only the value. So we've gotten the outputs, the different output labels for different output that we need. The next thing is to start splitting them to get the exact value that we need. So we don't need this invoice number, we only need the value. So I'm going to do that for all the variables that we've generated so far. So to do that, we're going to be using split test. Drag that down. So for test to split, we are going to be starting with the start date variable. So we are going to reference the start date text that we've created. Then what type of delimiter? Custom delimiter. Then we are going to be looking for this date of issue. So this is what we want to start splitting from. It's not a regular expression. Over here, we're just going to rename this variable to now store the value of the start date. So this is going to be start date value. Save. The next one is going to be due date. So I'll drag split test again. Test to split, which is the due date text variable. Then it's a custom and due date. So we're going to be rename this new variable as due date value. Then save. Next is the invoice ID. So I'm going to search for that variable as well, invoice ID text. So change this to custom, delimiter, invoice number. Then I'm going to rename this as invoice ID value. Save. Next is email. I'll drag this, search for email text, change this to custom email, then change this to email value. Save. Finally, we have split test for amount. So I'm going to drag that still within the loop. So I'm going to select for amount text, custom. So we're going to be looking for total due NGN. Then rename this as amount value. Then click on save. So looking at the output of our split test, let's look at the invoice ID value, for instance. So you find out that we have splitted that to two lines, 0 and 1. So basically, if we want to get this, we are not going to be using set variable to get this line 1 and not this line 0. The same thing is applicable to the start date value here, for instance. You can see that it's splitted to two lines, 0 and 1. So that would be the next stage. Also, one might be wondering, how about our client name that we've not been able to get that? If you look at our text list variable that we have been using all this while, our client name is on line 10 and there is no text before the client name, it's just the line. So it's just for us to reference this line on our set variable action, which is going to be the next series of action that we'll be using. So I'll search for set variable. So drag that to this part. So we are going to, the new variable name is going to be client. Then I will reference that line 10. So this is the way you reference lines within a variable. So text list is our variable, then the line in particular within that, then before the percent sign. So save. So when I run this, for instance, the client variable that I created, when I view that, you can see that it has extracted my client name. So we already have that. So I'm going to go ahead to set variable for date value and all the values that variables that we've created, just like this amount, for instance, to get line 1 of this. So we are going to be starting with index ID, the invoice ID. So I'll just set variable here, then new variable invoice ID. Over here, I'll just reference the invoice ID value. Then within here, I want it to return the line 1 of that, not the first one, which is 0. So this is the way we reference that as well. Save. Then for our set variable again for start date, the variable start date value, return line 1, save. Next one is going to be the due date. Due date variable, that's the due date value, not the text. Return line 1, save. Then the next is going to be the amount. Amount value, return line 1, then save. For email, it's going to be different. When you look at our email value here, we want it to return line 2 because this line 2 is that of our client. Line 1 is my own email. There are 2 emails on the invoice, so you need to be careful about that depending on the number of emails that you have on that invoice. So you need to be careful of the line of the particular email of your choice. For me, it's going to be line 2. So close, set variable, email, email value, return line 2. Save. So I'm going to run the flow. So you can see here where you have our invoice ID, you only have one value. Over here, you have our start date, you only have one value. And the email, you have one value. So the next stage for us is to start writing these values to an Excel file. So the next action we are going to be doing is to get the first free row on our Excel worksheet. So I'll search for that action, get the first free row. Let me just go to the Excel option of things. So we have this action, retrieve the first free row, given the column of the active Excel worksheet. So we drag that in here. Get the first free row on Excel worksheet. Our column is going to be column A. Save. So when we look at our Excel file, you can see that the invoice ID is on column A, client name is on column B, email is on column C, start date is on column D, end date is on column, due date is on column E, and amount on column F. You have to know this because when you're writing to the Excel, you need to tell it where to insert each variable. So we're going to use write to Excel action. Excel worksheet. So we're referencing the Excel file that we've opened. That is what this Excel instance stands for. Then value to write, what variable? So we're starting with the invoice ID. So search for the invoice ID variable. You can search here, just type invoice. So this is the exact variable, not the text, not the value. Then column, what column? From our Excel file, the invoice ID is on column A. So I will type column A. What row? We are going to reference the first free row column that we have actually created earlier. So I will search for that variable. This is the variable. Save. Then I'm going to write the second one, which is my client's name. Same process. Value to write. Select my client. Type that in. Column, that is column B. Row, the first free row. Save. And the next one is going to be my email address. Value to write email. Column C. Row, the first free row. Save. The next one is going to be my start date. Value to write start date. Column D in this case. Row, the first free row. Save. The next one is going to be my due date. Value to write due date. Column E. Row, the first free row. Save. Then finally we have the amount. Value to write the amount. Column F. Row, first free row. Then save. So we are going to run the flow. Right now, when I run this flow, it will open up the Excel file, open up the folder, extract the data from the invoice that I have. Currently, I have just one invoice on the folder here. It's going to open up this particular invoice, extract the data on this invoice, open up the Excel file that I've saved already, then populate the Excel file with the values from the invoice and show us that. So I'll click on run. you can see that it has opened up this Excel file, and you can see that it has populated. Let me just expand this. You can see that it has populated everything that we asked it to do on this Excel file. You can see the start date, the end date, everything here. So the next thing I'm going to do, basically, because I have other invoices, I have like 33 invoices in total. So I'm going to load all of them into this particular folder. So I've populated the folder with more invoices. You can see a whole lot of them here. I'm going to go back and click on my flow to run that. So I'll click on run. Let me close the Excel file as well. Don't save. I don't want it to save now. Before I click on run, I'll have to remove this pause here because I want it to, instead of just showing me one invoice, I want it to iterate to all the invoices that I have. So I'm going to click on this to remove the pause. Then I'll click on run. So you can see that it's populating the Excel file. So right now we are at number 8. So I don't need to be opening the invoices and populating this myself. I can set up a flow that does that for me. So once it's done with each step, it goes back to iterate over the next one. You can also see the number of items that it has iterated over here, where you have the first 3 rows. So the flow has finished running and we have our data sets. You can see that we have populated 33 rows of data. So you can also set it up in such a way that once it finishes populating the data, it can close up the Excel file. So to do that, you can just add close Excel file at the end so that you don't necessarily need to close this yourself. Save your item, save document, or you save as whatever document you want and whatever location, but you can just save the document. So you have that at the end here. What this does is that once it finishes running, it will automatically close, just like it's opened by itself. It can close by itself automatically. But I'm just going to do this manually so that we can just import this data into Power BI and continue with our analysis. So I'm going to save this and close. So over here in Power BI, we are going to import the data set. So I will click on Connect Excel Workbook. We have the text folder, invoice data, that is our data set. Click on the sheet 1. You can see the preview of our data. Then click on Transform. So you can see that the data label, the data type, Power BI has changed type for us. But we can quickly check to ensure that each column is represented by the right data type. So I have the invoice ID client. Those are text, email text, which is fine. Start date is date, which is fine. Due date is date, which is fine. And amount is number, whole number, which is fine. So I'm just going to rename this as invoices. Then close and apply. So for my canvas background, I'll quickly adjust this canvas because the report is now a wide one. So I'll reset this, go to canvas setting, change this from normal to custom, and reduce the width to 1100 pixel. So here we have our data, and we're going to change the format of the date here so that we'll have it in day, month, and year. Start date, day, month, and year as well. So we will go over to the home reports view, click on enter data to create a table for our measures. Click load. So the first measure is going to be the total invoices, which is going to be the distinct count of our invoice ID column. So new measure, total invoices. which is equal to distance count of the invoice ID column. Next is the total amount, which is just going to be the sum of this amount column. New measure total amount, which is sum of the amount column. So the next thing we're going to do is to find the overdue invoices. And we're going to be using this due date for that. So we're going to be finding the difference between this due date and today in order to be able to label which invoices are overdue. So to do that, we're going to use a calculated column, new column. So we're going to be using this dash function, days until due, which is actually the difference between today's date and the invoice due date. So we have these different dates, which is the difference between the today's date and the invoice due date. So for this particular one, this is showing that days until due for this 13 days. This is 8th of August 2025. And today's date is 26th of July 2025. So 13 days difference. The next thing we're going to do is to create a flag. So if this is actually overdue, say yes, like give us yes. But if it is not overdue, give us no. So we're going to be using another calculated column. So click on new column, is overdue. So if today is greater than the invoice due date, then give us yes. Then if it is not greater than that, give us no to show if it is due or if it is overdue. So you can see that this one, that the days until due is 13, you can see that it's not yet overdue. But the ones that are -6, you can see that it's actually overdue. So the next thing we're going to be calculating is the overdue amount. So the number of invoices where the overdue is equal to yes. The amount of the invoices, not the number of invoices. The amount of the invoices where overdue is equal to yes. So we're going to be using this measure for that. So calculate the total amount which you have created, filter for where overdue is equal to yes. So that will give us the overdue amount. So the next one is the overdue invoices, which is similar to this. I'm just going to copy this. Instead of total amount, we are now going to be referencing the total number of invoices where overdue is equal to yes. So I'll right click on this, new measure, overdue, where I have amount, I'll just replace that with invoices. So calculate the total number of invoices where overdue is equal to yes. So the next measure we're going to be creating, we want to track invoices that will be due in the next 7 days so as to help us to be proactive. So I'm going to use this measure for that. We're basically using our days until due column. So we're calculating the total number of invoices where days until due is greater than or equal to 0 and the days until due is less than or equal to 7, so that we can track the invoices that will be due in the next 7 days. So the same thing is going to be for the amount as well. So I'm going to use the same measure, but instead of invoices, I'm going to be replacing this with amount. And during 7 days amount as well. See, so we have all our measures that we need for this particular analysis. Then we start creating our visualization. So firstly, I'll start by creating a simple background on PowerPoint. So over here on PowerPoint, I'll click on Insert Shape. So the fill of this particular shape, I want it to be this color, more fill. Click OK. Then I don't want it to have any outline, no outline. The next thing is to add a rounded rectangle to this. Like I said, this is just a simple background. Extend this up and extend it down as well. Then I'll want this to be white color and no outline as well. So I'll just right click, or rather I'll click Ctrl A, Ctrl G to group all, then right click and save as picture. I'm not going to save this because I already have the image saved on my machine. So I'll go over to Power BI and import the background. So I have this here, canvas background, browse, pictures, invoice PNG, open, set image to fit, and turn off the transparency. So we have this here. We start by creating the card visual for the metrics that we have calculated as our measures. So I'll click on build, select the new card, drag that here. Then I want to have the total amount, overdue amount, and the last due in 7 days amount on my card. So I'm just going to edit their names here, overdue amount. I'll just leave this as just overdue. Total, I'll just leave that as total, remove the amount part of things. Then due in 7 days, I'll just rename this as due in 7 days. Okay, so for each of them, I'm just going to change because they are in NGN, Nigerian Naira. So I'm just going to change them to have that symbol. Then also for total amount. All right. Then I'm going to start formatting this card. Go to the format pane, size and style, turn off the background. Then I want the height of the card to be 157. Then scroll down. Where I have the layout of the card, I want the space between cards to be 20. I want it evenly spaced. Then scroll down to where I have the card itself. I want to change the shape of this card to rounded rectangle. The rounded corners, I want them to be 12. Then the border of the card, I want the color of that to be this light gray. The next thing I'm going to do, the total number of invoices for each one, total, overdue, and due in 7 days, I want to add them as reference labels. So I'm going to go to where I have reference label, add data for total. I'm going to add total invoices to the reference label. So we have this. And I'm going to where I have the title, select label. I'm going to change the field name, change that to custom. I only want it to read invoices. And the number of invoices. So you can see 32. Then I will do the same for overdue. But before that, I don't want this divider to show. So I'm just going to select all the reference label, scroll down to where I have divider, turn that off. Then for extend this a bit. Okay. Then go back to where I have overdue. On the reference label part, select that, select the total invoices that are overdue. because I want that to show here as well. Then edit the title, custom. Then same thing is applicable for due in 7 days. Just label that as invoices. Edit the title. Then I'm going to go over to the call out value for everything. I want to reduce that to 30. Then reduce the size of this. So we have the card visual. The next thing I'm going to do is to quickly add a title here. Text box, invoices, select all, change this to 24, make it bold, adjust it. And place that up here. Ensure that the background is turned off as well. Then I'll add a slicer for the invoice ID here. Just select invoice ID. I don't want it to be a drop down, so scroll down to where you have the slicer settings. I don't want it to be vertical list, so I'll select drop down, adjust it to fit this particular part. Turn off the background as well. So the next thing we're going to do is to create our table to show our invoices. So I will click on table visual. Just ensure it fills up this remaining space. Then select our invoice ID, the client name, the email, the start date, the due date, the amount, and is overdue. So over here, I'll click on build so I can adjust the start date and the due date. Click on this arrow, select date hierarchy and select start date. Then I'll do the same for this due date. I will extend this so that the overdue part is also showing. Then turn off the background of the table. Change the style preset. Set that to minimal. So we currently have sum of amounts here and I don't like that. I'll click on build. Change this from sum of amounts to don't summarize so that you only read amount, which is fine. And the alignment of our is overdue. I want it to be center aligned. I'll click on format pane. Go over to cell element. No specific cell this time around. Then select is overdue. I want the value to be center aligned, which is fine. Then the amount, I want the amount to also have the dollar symbol. I'll click on amount, go over to where I have the currency, select the Naira symbol. So we have the Naira amount showing. Click on the table, go over to our format where I have grid. Click on border, change the border color to this light gray. Then also where I have the row padding, I want this to be 15 so that we can have that even space. The next thing I'm going to do is for my overdue, I want to add a conditional formatting on this overdue such that if it is no, it is green. If it is yes, it is red. So all these yeses that I have here will be highlighted in red. So I'm going to go over to cell element, then click on overdue. I'm going to just use font color, enable that. Then if it is yes, give me red to show that this is overdue. Then if it is no, give me green to show that this is not yet due. Let me just select this shade of green. Okay. So you can see that the yeses are highlighted in red and the no's are highlighted in green. So I also want to add a background to my column header here so that it will pronounce that they are column headers. So I'll click on this header, background header. We'll use this hex code for that. So we have this. The total that we have down here, I can turn that off because there is no use for that on this particular table because we already have a sum of the total as a KPI card. Now we are done building this report and we have the invoices. The last one that we have is 0519. So assuming in our invoice folder here that I add another invoice here, which is 0520, and I want my report to update, I can actually go back and run this flow. 33, 34, so it has closed by itself. Then I can go over to Power BI. This is our report. I can click on refresh. And you can see that the table has automatically updated to show the new invoice that I added to the folder. So this is a workflow that will really help in order to extract data from a PDF file and create a report with Power BI. This is the end of this report. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on what you think about this particular video. Bye, and see you in my next video.